Well, hello. This is to show you what I do in the sort of middle of the process of making something that takes about 3 weeks. This is in the middle week, around the middle, maybe the Wednesday of the middle week if you go Monday to Friday. And this is a kind of tidying up stage which I rather like, which is where you can clean up edges and rough stuff that you can't really do when it's still too wet and floppy, and at the point you join it. So you leave that for this stage. What I'm basically going to do is add the shutters at this point. Now remember, on the first day, the first stage of this process is rolling a slab. And then a couple of days later you mark it out and it's got a bit stiffer and drier. You mark out the pieces that you want and cut them out. And in my case, if I press any letters into it, that's that stage. It's still really too floppy to join, but perfect for pressing and cutting out. That will be day 2. And then day 3 is a couple of days later, when it's got a little bit drier and stiffer. That's when you can join it, which was the last video I made, which was how to join one of these houses. Join the 4 sides and the roof. But there's bits that are best left to this stage. So about a week later, in the fridge, drying very slowly. That's in a non-working fridge. It just means it's like a damp cupboard, is what they used to call it. So it dries very slowly and evenly, because you've got to get the moisture level of the clay very even, otherwise it'll split. So to show you how I join another bit and can add bits on at this stage, it's still quite moist but firm, it won't bend very much. So I just scratch the surface where I want to join things, which in this case is shutters. And I'm scratching it with a piece of comb, like this. I just cut a comb short. Scratching it to break the surface, which is of course the first bit to dry, the clay, and it helps the water which we're going to add spread into the body. Right, so now with a small brush I add a bit of, I don't need very much, just a bit of water. It's actually water with clay mixed in, but I call it a kind of glue because I used it when we joined the pieces together. It's very easy. You get lots of bits of clay left over in the process, which you can put into the glass jar with water. I think just water is enough, but that's the way I've always done it. Now, at this point I roll kind of sausages, as they call them when I was learning ceramics. But in Slovenia they more accurately call them snakes, or kača. But I roll them very small, very thin sausages, or very thin snakes, so I call them worms. They're more like worms, the Slovene for which is churu. And I do this for also, as you noticed probably if you watch the joining video, this is what I do to reinforce the joins where two two pieces of clay join. I put this here, I put this to reinforce the joint. These are churu, or worms. Now I'm just pushing it into where I put the water, that's where I want them. And the last little arch over the archway. It's not very literal, this house, it's just the way I like to do it. Now, I have to press them in to make the pattern that I want, and I use a bottle top. Well, there's a kind of some jar, I can't remember where I got it. Maybe yogurt or something like that, because it's got the right pattern. This gives the effect of a shutter. Don't press too hard, you don't need to. Just enough to get the pattern. Now a different one for the steps at the bottom of the door, just flat. And then round the door I cover an ornate frame made with this random pattern that was made, and this is plaster actually. It skips, so the clay doesn't stick to it. It's very good for marking out like this. Right, now I just trim it off at the top and bottom of the windows with a table knife, though without serration, so it makes it smooth, doesn't leave a mark. That's that. Next thing I do is to, now it's been drying for about a week anyway, since I joined it, but it needs another week before I think about biscuit firing, colouring it. And it helps to pop the windows out at this stage so that it dries more evenly, otherwise more air gets round in it. It's important that it dries very evenly, otherwise it will split in the kiln. I've just done this on some English houses and they were a bit drier than this. Still works though, I think. There's some flexibility over when you do this. The last thing I do is check the bottom. Very important. So I think the first thing they tell you when you're learning ceramics is that to make sure that you don't, whatever you make, it doesn't wobble. So you've got to have a good flat bottom. And these things are quite tall and thin, and they really need to be quite stable or they'll fall over. So you have to check that it sits flat and doesn't wobble at all. That's good. I'll do a little bit finishing on the roof. But that's about it. Now, the next stage after this is when it's completely air dry and it will be, well, light grey, ready to go in the kiln, and that's smoothing down with a like a Brillo pad, effectively. A Scotch-Brite they call it here, and you can smooth it down. It's quite hard and very brittle, and that's when you decorate it or paint it with colours, and that's another video.